Can teenagers be safely put on antidepressants if it's necessary, or is it
Well,
ever necessary?
well, it's never proven to be effective. There's only one SSRI that's been approved for kids under the age of 18, and that one wasn't even really tested well, and that's Prozac. But there are a lot of extenuating circumstances, a lot of pressure from Eli Lilly to get that one approved, but none of the other antidepressants are approved for under the age of 18. First of all, most of the studies prove that they don't work any better than a sugar pill, so they're not even effective. Doctors, however, can prescribe drugs even if they're not approved by the FDA for any purpose. There's lots of examples of doctors prescribing things for things that the FDA has not approved for, and they can get away with it legally. So antidepressants are very commonly prescribed in teenagers who are sad or whatever, but they haven't been tested in children and they haven't been approved.
So if you have a moody teenager who's sullen and withdrawn, you could take him to a doctor, her to a doctor, and very easily get a prescription?
Very easily, very easily.
What are some of the repercussions of that?
Well, for one thing, virtually all the school shooters that we know of whose medical records have not been sealed have been on the SSRIs. Mm-hmm. And what the SSRIs do is, among other things, at the basic neuroscience level, they're depleting serotonin, and some of them are depleting dopamine, the natural antidepressants. Mm-hmm. But they're also altering the brain in other ways, and most of them we don't really know what's going on. They're toxic substances. Most of them have fluoride attached, fluorocarbon atoms, or chlorocarbon atoms. We talked about that earlier. Those are toxic substances. Mm-hmm. They make the drug long-acting, so it only has to be given once a day, but it also makes them toxic. But among other things that these drugs do, besides mania or agitation or insomnia, they can actually decrease one's impulse control. So you wind up treating somebody for sadness with a drug that can cause mania or impulse control problems. So if you are being dissed and you aren't on a drug, you may just pick a fight or walk away. If you're on a drug that destroys your ability to control your impulses, you may hit back. If you have a knife, you might pick a knife fight, or if you have a gun, you might shoot them. So impulse control in the context of these antidepressant drugs is a serious issue. And so the school shooters, like I said, have been on Prozac, or Eric Harris, the Columbine shooter, he was on Luvox. There was no question, he was manic for months before the Columbine, and he was on Luvox, which is a Prozac-like compound. Mm-hmm. Made by, I can't remember the name of the drug company that produced it. Jeff Weiss, the Red Lake shooter, was on 60 milligrams of Prozac. He was a teenager. That's a huge dose. The starting dose is 20, and a lot of people get manic and have insomnia just on 20. And Eli Lilly chose not to start out with 10. 10 is, they should have had 10s and 20s, but they said, one dose fits all. There's 7% of the population that lacks the enzyme that can demobilize or at least denigrate the Prozac molecule. 7% can't destroy it. And so that 7%, and it's a very expensive test to decide who can metabolize Prozac or not. So 7% of the population are probably extremely toxic right away on 20, maybe even on 10. Jeff Weiss was on 60. And he shot his grandfather and another member of his family, I think his grandfather's girlfriend, and then 8 members of his school, and then I think he shot himself too. So he didn't have impulse control probably. He was disrespected, probably blew up, and was being humiliated perhaps, or bullied, just living in poverty, no hope. He's gonna, that's gonna motivate him to do something. And if he's lacking impulse control because of a drug, brain-altering drug, then that's a setup for violence. He had access to a gun, and he probably was being disrespected at school, probably failing or something. Who knows what all the factors were.
So it is very risky.
It's risky to give the drugs that, and the FDA has never approved a single drug for suicidality. There's no drug approved for suicidality because all those drugs increase suicidality. and in other forms of violence as well. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights, CCHR, and the website is cchr.org, has a number of wonderful videos and documents about this very matter, about the school shooters. Now, it's still rare, but it never happened 40 years ago when there weren't drugs for kids, and now we're seeing an epidemic of it. And it's not just kids shooting kids in school. They're shooting kids outside of school, so it's not just school shooters, and it's not just kids. It's adults. There's innumerable examples of people taking a drug and then doing something totally irrational, robbing a bank in plain sight. You know, parents whose kids get on Prozac call that type of drug the "I don't give a damn" drug, meaning you don't care anymore. You're in a fog. You're just a different person now, and you're not going to respond as a normal human would under the influence of a drug. We all know that if someone's taking amphetamines or on cocaine, they'll do criminal things or irrational things, and then we blame the drug. We blame the drug. Well, but we don't want to blame the drug when it's a legal drug. But the drugs, legal and the illegal drugs, work very similarly. And so we should stop defending this honorable, so-called honorable profession of pharmaceuticals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.